Hello everyone! School is now in session and Resleriana Academy has started. I hope you're all enjoying the story for Resleriana Academy. It's the highest effort event they've had so far. Definitely the highest quality, best one they've done. It's pretty fun. For this video, I'm going to be going a little bit more in depth on what I think about the meta than I usually do when it comes to the Academy characters. There's a lot to cover with them, and a lot of sort of like caveats and niches that they cover that aren't super obvious at first. It requires some advanced knowledge. So I'm going to be talking about all three banners as a whole in some senses. We'll get to that when I get to the actual characters, but for now, let's just go over a little bit of the other content first. I suppose as far as the shop goes, we do have a few things in here in the bundles. We have this freshman school supplies pack, which is 300 paid gems. It comes with Atelier Fest tickets and cookies. This is really good paid gem value, and you can get 3 of them. So if you're willing to put gems in, this pack is very good value for its price. Then we have the senior one. This one is less good value for most people. It's just a bunch of cookies and brilliant wishing stones. I don't really recommend this one unless you really want cookies for, say, Roman tournament, right? If you're willing to dump that many paid gems on cookies for Roman tournament or something. Then we have the enhancement pack. This one is also paid gems. It's 1,000, and it comes with a single memory fragment, and you can get up to 3 of these. This is a little interesting. This is something they only started offering in JP like a week ago. Like 5 days ago, literally, with the start of the summer banners. So they're actually bringing this to global literally right away, like super early. So that's kind of interesting. If you're the type of person that this is targeted at, you will know. Most people will probably not buy this. It's pretty pricey. And then we have the enhancement pack. This one is the free version, 500 free gems, and you get 10 chocolate cookies. It's really up to you whether or not you care about that. I don't really care about it that much. I always have an excess of cookies. Darn, I can't check here. I probably have like 150 cookies right now, so you know. And then we have the tickets, of course. As always, these tickets are only valid for the current banner, so the one with Academy Resna and Academy Sophie. If you buy them, you must use them before the banner goes away. I do recommend buying tickets for every single Academy banner. They are all worth at least tickets, even if they aren't necessarily worth pulling on. So I'm going to go ahead and buy these. We will pull them later. But for now, let's just go ahead and get into the character overviews. It's pretty exciting. Resna is an S tier attacker. If you watched my tier list video, you would know that. And then Sophie is kind of like an A+ to S tier supporter. She's also very good. So this banner is quite high value. It's a very strong banner. Of course, I assume most of you, after the rose banners, are quite out of gems. So that's a little rough, but yeah, let's just get into it. First up, we have the memoria. Very cute art. Sophie with the cat, Mario in glasses. I love this art. And this is critical damage for air characters. So obviously, if you want to use Resna, Academy Resna, as like your main team, your main DPS, this is going to be one of the best memoria for her. Now, she does have other really strong memoria that she can get. While this one is probably her best in slot, there is of course the one from the base pool with Fierce that gives air skill damage and 11% speed. That one is very good for her if you already have copies of it, and a few other things. So this one actually has competition, unlike for Rose Valeria, where her version of this is just straight up best in slot, but this is still like best in slot. So the main reason why you might not go all in on this if you're like spending money on it is because outside of the air tournament, Academy Resna is not particularly useful for Roman tournament. And even then you can use Izana for that one, I believe. So it's kind of like investing a lot of money into her isn't super worth it. However, she will just delete everything in the game. She is super powerful, and this memoria makes her even more powerful, so it's really good. Obviously, for, you know, players that aren't spending, it's really not worth chasing memoria like this. You're going to use your memory crystals on something else, most likely like Masterpiece or the one from last banner with Izana eating the fish. So still a very good memoria. Yeah, just very good. The crit damage memorias are always good, they're just quite limited in scope. So all right, let's go over Sophie first. So Academy as a whole is the start of kind of a new meta in Resleri where we have a lot of panel manipulation. These characters have a lot to do with panels, so like blue panels, red panels, burst panels, etc. They do a lot of things around panels on the timeline, and they're the first characters we have that are able to manipulate the timeline. And so all of their kits are based around that. And right now they might seem kind of underwhelming, but a lot of these characters gain more value as the game continues because they get more synergies, and that's kind of where Sophie stands. She gets a lot better once you unlock synergies with different characters. She will still be a solid supporter anyways, and I'll go over why that is. But yeah, let's just go over her skills real quick. So her skill 2, basically it's area recovery. She is a supporter, and after recovery, all of your allies' panels, other than burst panels, get converted into boost panels. Boost panels are the blue ones that give 40% skill damage. So she will create a blue panel on every single ally. And this is pretty good. They're 40% skill damage. Now, of course, if there's already a blue panel on your attacker, that's not going to do anything. If you change the timeline with items or skill 1 or whatever, you might accidentally put blue panel on an enemy. But overall, area heal, 40% skill damage, pretty decent as a supporter. The main thing is that because it's through blue panels, this skill damage cannot be scaled through buff A, but it's still pretty good value for a supporter skill 2, especially because her passive is quite good with a 15% skill damage and stun damage boost for all allies. The skill damage from this will scale with damage buff A. Basically, for non-lightning characters, on average, she ends up being as good or better than Liddy in general, just between her passive and skill 2. Obviously, for like lightning characters like Izana, she's going to be worse than Liddy on average because Liddy's passive is so good for lightning characters, but she is a more generic supporter that fits into teams a little nicer. And yeah, she's just really solid. She's very comparable to Liddy and Flock in that regard. So very good supporter, especially if you don't have Liddy or Flock. She fits that same niche. She's really, really solid just between her skill 2 and her 1 passive. She also has the Kitty Cat team passive, which every single Academy unit has. This is shared between all of them, and this gives immunity to negative panels, so the red panels, not super important on a supporter, but really good on attackers like Academy Resna. And then she also boosts the effects received from positive panels by 10%. So this will basically be your blue panels that'll go from 40% skill damage to like 44%. Overall, this passive is kind of nice quality of life on your attackers with a little bit of damage. So it's good on Academy Resna. On supporters like Sophie, it's pretty dang useless. It doesn't really do anything. It does make you immune to, say, like paralysis panels and blind panels and stuff as well, but those aren't super common, right? So once again, like the Rose passives, it's nice quality of life when it works, but it's, for all intents and purposes, for most things, not really a passive. So yeah. And then that's kind of like the main bread and butter of Sophie. That's her gimmick. She creates blue panels for your team. Her skill 1 and her bursts aren't really as notable. Her skill 1 attacks one target and inflicts panel immunity on the target for 1 turn, which means they can't take advantage of panels, so they'll be immune to blue panels, but then that also means they're immune to red panels. And this might sound really good, except you see this note here, panel immunity causes all panels other than burst panels to have no effect, so they can still burst. This won't stop them from being able to burst, which kind of limits its usefulness in my opinion. This effect just isn't very good. There are some situations where it may come clutch in nullifying a blue panel on an enemy that'll wipe your team, but by and large, it's a really bad skill 1, and her burst is not in a much better spot, where after attacking, it converts the panel on the next enemy in the turn order. So the next enemy to take a turn will get converted into a protection weakened panel, which is a panel that when it's obtained will give all enemies a received damage taken debuff. So the problem with this kind of is that the enemy needs to get a turn for that panel to have any effect. And then, like, say you have a breaker on the team, like, you know, Academy Ryza, the breaker will end up consuming that debuff most of the time before your attacker can actually attack the enemy. Overall, this burst is pretty weak and really awkward. However, one thing that's really, really interesting about this burst, it's an area attack, and it actually has the highest damage rate in the game for an area attack at 375%. That's pretty dang high. Like, really, really good for supporter damage strats. Most area bursts are 300% damage rate, and this is 25% more damage. Now, of course, she is a supporter at the end of the day. She can't equip attacker gear. She won't, you know, be able to take advantage of damage buffet and things like that. So she will not replace an actual area attacker in terms of damage scaling. Like, even with the better damage rate, she's not going to out damage a good attacker, but it's still pretty interesting nonetheless. And she is pretty useful for, like, Stab Tower because of this. Stab Tower doesn't really have good area attack options outside of Mew, but she only has it on skill 2 and not burst, so pretty interesting there. But yeah, overall, very interesting character. It's kind of hard to see how she'll be used right now because we don't have all of the units that JP does. Creating blue panels is cool and all, but it's not, like, super impactful, right? But there are some characters in the future, such as Bridezana and Heidi and Dark Bell and whatever, that will, you know, get buffs from obtaining panels. So Sophie is really good synergy with them. And of course, when we get to Academy Resna, you'll understand she has a lot of synergy with blue panels, so you do want to make blue panels for her. You want to make sure she has blue panels. So very good there, and especially the next Academy banner with Gara Ryza, she can upgrade the blue panels. So she can turn them into blue panels plus. I don't know what they're gonna end up being called. I guess I can check on Resna when we get there. She will upgrade them, and instead of 40% skill damage, they'll be giving 90% skill damage when they're upgraded. So Sophie just has a really good synergy with the rest of the Academy kit, some units that come in the future, and she's just a solid supporter in general, but she's not absolutely must-have. And I'll get a little bit into that later when I talk more on the actual Academy combo. But if you get her, you're not unhappy. She's a really good unit. She also has a skill power up gift in the colors of blue to yellow. Skill power up is of course always a good synthesis gift. However, blue to yellow is an awkward color combination because of the new material we have with Academy, the Academy Uni, which is purple, and that's going to be the material you're going to want to use on most of your skill power synths. But blue to yellow is still a good combination. She will link to Riven, she will link to Corneria, and a number of other characters. So she's absolutely a good character to get, just for this alone, on top of being a really solid supporter, and you can't go wrong with her, like, at all. She's really solid. Then her leader skill is pretty bad. She boosts all allies' physical attack and magic attack by 8% for each Kirhen Bell character in the party. You usually won't have too many Kirhen Bell characters in your party. Kirhen Bell is the tag for characters from the game Atelier Sophie, so anyone that lives, you know, in the same town as Sophie, which is these characters. It's not very many, right? And they're, by and large, not super good characters either, so very pointless leader skill overall. But yeah, that's Sophie. Let's just, let's go on to Resna. And here is Resna, the S tier air attacker. She's an AoE attacker, she's an area attacker, and for an area attacker, she has the highest damage potential in the game for a number of reasons. She's just very, very, very strong. The main reason is, well, one, her weapon is super, super over budget, and we'll get into that later when I go over the gear. And she just has really good scaling with Academy Ryza, which comes on the next banner. Before I just talk about her more a little bit, my personal judgment of Academy Resna is that she is, like, we'll just compare her to the other meta area attacker in Izana, but on her own, I think she is about even with or a bit worse than Izana, if you want a comparison. So she can do more damage than Izana on her own sometimes. Sometimes she's a little bit worse. There's a few reasons for that. A lot of it comes down to her burst not being as good as Izana's burst for a lot of situations. But overall, she's really solid and absolutely can compete on even ground with Izana. And then as soon as you add Academy Ryza into the party, she blows Izana out of the water. Academy Ryza, Gyara Ryza is really, really strong support for her. And she becomes an absolutely just crazy death machine once you add Ryza into the party. So yeah, let's go over her kit and see what makes her tick, what makes her do so much damage. First of all, once again, every Academy character will have this kitty cat team passive, so it's just a minor damage boost for her, 10% effect on positive panels, which is pretty good when you have the upgraded positive panels I talked about earlier. And then her passive, her other passive, when using boost type panels, boosts own skill damage by 50% for one turn, and it cannot be stacked. So basically, when she gets a blue panel for 40% skill damage, she will also get another skill damage buff for 50%. And you can't get this multiple times, so if, you know, she gets another blue panel, she's not going to get another 50% buff. However, I'm pretty sure this does scale with damage buff A. It doesn't cap, it just can't be stacked. So obviously, any character that has stuff that has a crit damage memoria available to them and also has other things that scale with damage buff A is going to be getting like absolutely crazy damage, like Resleria. So Resna is kind of in that sort of same area, but not quite as absurd as Roseval is, but still very good. She has a lot of self-damage buffs that are really strong, so 50% skill damage, very, very good. Even without damage buff A, 50% skill damage is a lot, and unless you have Memoria, you're not building damage buff A anyways, but it's just like the top end of her damage is really, really good because of that. But yeah, this passive's really solid. 50% skill damage is a lot, and when we get to the rest of her kit, you'll see that you'll basically always be using her with a blue panel. If you cannot get blue panels on Academy Resna, you may as well not be using Academy Resna. So very, very good passive. It should always be active for more or less. And yeah, to start off with, we have her skill 1. And when she uses this after attacking, she will create a blue panel on her next turn if there's not a burst panel there. So she has her own blue panel generation, which synergizes with her passive, of course, and gives her more damage. So this is very good. Her skill 1 will create a blue panel for her on her next turn. And usually you will get this blue panel. Usually use items on Resna herself, so it's not going to get shifted off of her most of the time. But you just have to play with it to see. It can be a little bit awkward occasionally, but doing skill 1 into skill 2 for the first round on Academy Resna is very valid for her and absolutely works. So yeah, she's pretty good. Her skill 2, when getting a boost type panel, so when getting a blue panel, this attack has guaranteed crit, 100% crit rate. 100% crit rate is really, really strong on specifically area attackers, which she is. She's an area attacker. For single target attackers, it's not like quite as important because you can reroll the crits. You can just reset the fight, reroll the crits, but for area attackers, you know, that crit rate's really, really important because it's very difficult to reroll 4 or 5 separate crits at a time, right? So she has her own crit, which means she doesn't need a crit support. She doesn't need Rarona, she doesn't need Bolt Resna, anything like that. As long as she gets the blue panel, she has the guaranteed crit, so very good. And then after attacking, she gives a critical damage received debuff to the enemy at a very small amount. You can basically completely ignore this. It's barely relevant, and because it's additive with crit damage, it's a really small amount of damage. Like, each stack is like 3% more damage on a really high-end resna, right, with good gear, so this basically doesn't matter, and you're expecting everything to die to the first hit anyways if you have the proper resna combo. So yeah, basically it's an area magic attack that has guaranteed crit on a blue panel. Really, really strong, especially when you compare it to, say, Izana's skill 2, which is an area magic attack that has ramping crit damage. The ramping crit damage on Izana's skill 2 is of course good if you don't kill everything on one turn, but for one punch combos, for first turn combos, killing everything immediately, the guaranteed crit here is much, much stronger. So very good there. And of course, you know, her passive is as soon as she gets the blue panel, she doesn't have to actually use a skill to get scaling from her passive like Izana does. So she is a little bit better in that regard for like first turn combos, whereas Izana ends up being better the longer the fight goes on. And then we have her burst. And her burst is also an area burst with the standard 300% damage rate. It gets double damage when her HP is higher than 70%, which is really solid. And then after attacking, she gets 50% crit damage buff, and she gives herself a boost plus panel, a blue plus panel on her next panel. So ideally, the second part of the burst doesn't really matter, because ideally you've already killed everything if you're bursting with her. But it's a nice little bonus if you can keep that panel on her. Once again, boost plus panels are 90% skill damage as opposed to the usual 40, so it's pretty good. But really, this just being an area burst that does double damage is really strong on its own. If, you know, you get to a point in the fight where you can burst before the fight is over with her. Her damage is absolutely crazy, so. But yeah, pretty good burst. But usually for combos with her, you're going to be doing either just her skill 2 with like Sophie providing the blue panels, or skill 1 into skill 2 if you don't have Sophie, or we will get items as well that create panels, and that's really important. So anyways, now that I've gone over the characters, oh right, and of course she also has a really good leader skill for herself and all Resleriana Academy characters. 30% stats is a fantastic leader skill. It affects herself, any Resleriana Academy character, so very good leader skill here. But yeah, now I just kind of want to talk about, like, should you be pulling for these units? How good are they on their own? What do you need to make the Academy team work? And how does the combo work, right? So the combo is basically like, Resna needs panels, right? She needs blue panels to function. Ideally, you want to get 2 blue panels on her, 2 high effectiveness blue panels, and she'll just stack so much skill damage. It's just absolutely absurd. Her weapon that they made for her also gives crit damage when she gets a blue panel. So giving her blue panels and improving those blue panels is key to making her do a lot of damage. And if you get this combo off where she gets 2 like boost plus panels into a skill 2 or whatever, she's going to wipe the floor with everything. And so how do you do this? Well, the main components of this combo are herself and Academy Ryza, and then sometimes Academy Sophie. So what Ryza does is she is an air breaker, and she's not only a really strong breaker, she's a really strong debuffer and a really strong buffer. So what Ryza does is she will lower air resistance, she will increase the enemy's magic damage taken, and she will improve all boost panels on the timeline. So she will turn them into boost plus panels. So if you have a boost panel on Resna and then on the panel after created from Sophie, then if you stun something with Academy Ryza, Ryza will improve those panels, so you will get boost plus panels from Ryza. And on top of that, you get all the debuffs from her, the air resistance, and the magic damage taken, and maybe the enemies are broken, although with inflating break with inflating stun gauges, breaking enemies is much harder nowadays, and triggering these effects from Ryza can sometimes be not worth it, especially a couple months down the line. But the debuffs are still really, really strong, even if you're not getting the boosted panels. And I think overall, without Ryza, Resna is in a pretty similar spot to Izana, if not a bit worse. And the reason for that is that if Resna doesn't one-shot the entire field, she has no backup. Like, if she kills all of the small enemies with her skill 2, but the boss is still left, she has no single target damage after that first combo to take out the boss. It's very difficult, whereas Izana has a really strong single target burst. So the key to having a really strong Resna team is just loading up on so much damage that everything dies to a single skill 2. And if you have the combo, that's absolutely possible, right? You create the blue panels, you improve the blue panels, you debuff the enemies, and then Resna just destroys everything with getting multiple blue panels and her guaranteed crit. She's really, really good at that. But if you just have her by herself, you can't really stack up that much damage as effectively, and you're not necessarily going to be one-shotting the entire field, right? So that's just my view on her, at least, from when I've used her in the past. She is, of course, a fantastic attacker by herself. It's just if you're not going for at least her and Ryza, and you already have Izana, I think she's not worth it, is basically what I'm trying to say, right? If you already have Izana, Resna is not worth it without Ryza, in my opinion, to like aim for. However, if you don't have Izana, you should absolutely try to pick up Resna. She's on the same level as one of the best attackers in the game, and if you do not currently have Izana or Roseval, picking up Resna will absolutely make your game a lot better, and then you can spark Ryza, maybe spark Sophie. Like, I absolutely recommend rolling on this banner right now if you don't have Izana. Like, that's basically how I feel about it, because both of these characters are really, really good and really strong. If you do have Izana and like a good Izana team set up already, I don't think it's worth chasing these characters. It's not that much of an upgrade unless you are committing to sparking Academy Ryza, right? Like, you need to be committing to get Academy Ryza for it to be a significant upgrade. And of course, they're very cute. Like, if you want to go for, you know, the waifu factor, obviously, I'm not going to stop you. I'm just talking purely from a strength/meta perspective here. I have Academy Resna on JP. I do not have Ryza. And I use my Izana team for everything, and Izana is good for almost everything. Izana does just as well, especially with Onsen Claudia coming right after Academy, which is the second unit I sparked on JP. And if you have Izana, in my opinion, she's much more worth it than anything in Academy. So if you're wondering, you know, should I roll for Academy? My opinion right now is that if you already have a good Izana team, just don't do it. If you do happen to pick up Resna from a daily or something, then absolutely consider either sparking Ryza or spending gems on Ryza. It's fun, it's good, they're both great characters. If you get Sophie from a daily, it's not worth targeting the others, because Sophie is not a required part of the combo. She's very good for it. She makes the combo flow very smoothly, especially on auto. However, with the next part of Academy Part 2, we will be getting an item that also creates blue panels and can take the place of Sophie. It won't do it quite as well, although in some situations it actually might do it better. It just kind of depends. Basically, Sophie is very good, but she's not such a key part of the combo that she's required. The important characters are Resna and Ryza, so if you get one of them, feel free to go out on the other. And I absolutely do recommend trying to get Resna if you don't currently have a good attacker. Anyways, I probably repeated myself too much, but that's basically my opinion on pulling for these characters. If you already have a good Izana team and you aren't, like, you know, super hyped for them, or if you're completely out of gems, you can just skip Academy and wait for Onsen Claudia in a month. So, because I know a lot of you are going to be out of gems right now. And then there's the third Academy banner with Verona and Aaron. That's the one that you should be spending on if you want a good Roman tournament ranking. Atelier Resleriana creates burst panels, which is really, really important for further improving your scores with Rose Valeria. So, and also the memoria from that banner is a very good supporter memoria as well. So that's the banner you should target if you are looking to do well in Roman tournament. I believe Resna is only used in one, which is the air one, so not super important to go after her. Or rather, Ryza and Resna only used in the air one, so yeah, not super important to go after them for Roman tournament specifically. Rorona is much more important. The third banner, Rorona and Aaron, they don't really fit into the combo, so they're not super important there. And then the last character being Mimi, she's just straight up bad. I'll talk about her more, you know, when that banner is relevant. But yeah, that's all I wanted to get out there about that. Let's go look at the recipes, and then we'll do some polls. All right, event recipes, Academy Part 1. First up, we have Resna's items, and I was talking about her broken staff earlier. This thing is crazy. While equipped to a character with air affinity, when getting a boost type panel, boosts own critical damage by 36% for one turn. This is completely over budget, like by far. This is absolutely absurd. So when she gets the first blue panel, you know, she gets 36% crit damage. When you use items and get another blue panel, she will get another 36% crit damage. That means you are getting 72% critical damage from this weapon. That is wild. That is so much crit damage. Not to mention, air is one of the elements that has a really good armor. There's an armor that gives like 23% received buff effect for air affinity. So that on top is just another like 7%, so it's like 86% crit damage from the weapon. It's just absolutely crazy. Not to mention, if you have, you know, a rank 5 memoria on her and you're using damage buffet instead, like damage buffet is also scaling this for another 36%. Like you can potentially even use damage buffet without a really, really good memoria just because of this weapon. This is the most broken weapon in the entire game, and one of the reasons she's so strong. This thing is a ton of damage. It's not the only reason, of course, but very, very, very good. Then the armor and the accessory are kind of whatever. The armor is skill damage of attacks that target all enemies by 16% for air attackers. Like I mentioned before, for air, we have, let me see if I can find it. Is it in main story? It would have been with Roman, right? Yeah, the colorless robe. Air has the colorless robe. You want to be using this on her. This is bested slot, like by far. Boost potency of buff effects received by 23%. That is a lot. This will affect the boost panels, the weapon, memoria, any supporter buffs. Like 23% is a huge value. You make this for Resna, and because of that, it just completely obsoletes the event armor. Like you just don't make this because it's not good enough. And then the accessory, while equipped to a character with air affinity, when using boost type panels, restores own HP by 8%. It has a really good stat spread, but the effect doesn't give damage, so you can also completely ignore the scrunchie. It's kind of interesting on like toe tree or something, especially if you're using Sophie with air toe tree. It's kind of interesting on her because she does get some recovery for that to stack up her passive, and 8% is a lot, and she'll be guaranteed getting those boost panels from Sophie. So it's interesting with that combo, but it's not really good for Resna. And there will be a better damaging accessory from Academy Part 3 that's made for Aaron. And there's also the Blue Pooty Charm as well, which is 18% skill damage at high HP. So this is probably what you're going to be making for Resna. This thing is very, very good. And yeah, now let's go over the Sophie gear. The weapon for Sophie is pretty bad, 6% HP recovery given. You'll just use Angel Staff, like just use Angel Staff. Pretty much every supporter is going to use Angel Staff, and yeah, Sophie's no exception. The uniform is kind of interesting, but unfortunately, it's not very good. While equipped to a character with stab affinity, when using boost type panels, reduces own damage received by 9% for one attack. I would like this a lot more if it was like a party buff rather than just for herself. As it is, it's kind of better on a stab defender than it is on Sophie, so because it's not supporter locked, it's just not very good. Probably use Scholar Coat on Sophie. I think that's the best option. And then we have the mask, and the mask is very strong. While equipped to support her with stab affinity after using a skill, boosts all ally skill damage by 6% when HP is high for 1 turn, and this helps her compete with other supporters because her passive is only 15% skill damage, but this extra 6%, you know, gets her up to 21% total when using a skill, so very competitive with other supporters like Liddy that gives 20% off of her skill too, right? So this is definitely the accessory you want to be using on Sophie. Very good accessory here. And then we have this weird set of items with the Bamboo Sword of Endeavor, which, while you have the Armor of Endeavor and the Spiked Shoes of Endeavor equipped, you get 50% increased effect of positive panels. And the Armor of Endeavor and the Spiked Shoes are, of course, these items. Now, these items have no effect on them. So basically, what you're doing is you're equipping the entire set just for this one effect, and this effect is not strong enough. It's just kind of not. In the ideal scenario where you have 2 boost plus panels, it is supplying 90% skill damage from those panels, and that's the ideal scenario. However, you know, say you're using, like, you're not going to have that scenario outside of a team with Academy Ryza and probably Sophie, and even then, obviously it's not worth using because this staff is just better. So I don't know. The entire set's pretty bad and not worth making. I would completely ignore these except for missions, which we do have missions that require making these items. They are right here. Yeah, synthesize Bamboo Sword of Endeavor or whatever for points. And speaking of missions, the last thing I wanted to talk about is the memoria from these missions. So make sure you get these done to get this memoria. This memoria is fantastic. You will get 5 copies from clearing all the missions. I believe the last missions are with part 3, so it'll be a little while till we get all 5 copies. This memoria is very good, and it is worth unlocking. What it does is boosts all allies' burst skill damage by 2%, but at rank 5 it'll be 10%. And of course this scales with the damage buff trait to get up to 25%. And for free-to-play players, people who are not whaling on memoria, this will be one of your better supported memoria. 25% burst skill damage is quite a bit, and it's very difficult to get enough copies of other memoria to be better than this, especially for, you know, budget Roman tournament stats. This will be very good for Izana, for Roseval. Just really solid memoria. Cute art, resna in her school outfit, all the other characters in the background. So yeah, very good memoria here. Make sure to get that one. But it'll be a while before we get all 5. But yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about for this video. Let's go ahead and do the polls. I did buy the tickets, but we do have a few days of Rose left, so we'll go ahead and do our Rose daily polls. Now, I have been getting pretty lucky recently, but it's all been outside of my videos. I have Roseval and Rose Liddy from daily polls now, which is crazy. And I believe it was yesterday where I scrounged up like 3,000 gems to do a 10 pull on the Flock banner. I cleared a bunch of dungeons and stuff to get the gems, and I actually pulled Flock, so hey, we got some winks. Maybe it's good. That shooting star at the start looked big too. So yeah, we actually have Flock now, which is pretty cool. Pretty happy about that. We'll just go ahead and watch this one all the way through, even though it's probably nothing. But super happy about the way my global account is turning out now. I haven't gotten any good memoria, but I do have a lot of characters now. Just somehow all of my good pulls haven't been happening in my videos, so that's kind of unfortunate for all of you that like watching them. But it's just Lent. Well, we kind of figured that would happen. All right. And now we get to do our first wish on the Academy banner. I would very much like to get Resna. I love Resna. I think she's cute. I like getting all the Resnas. I have all the Resnas on JP. They love me there, but I don't have any Resnas on this account. I don't have Bolt Resna or Christmas Resna, so it's kind of the opposite situation. Where I get all of them on JP, but on Global I don't, but that's fine. But it would be cool to get Academy Resna. I do enjoy her, so hopefully the tickets treat me well, or hopefully we get something else good. Who knows, we'll see. Alright, not looking good to start. Still not looking good, let's go. But yeah, apparently I obviously need to stop recording my pulls because they're always better off stream or something. At least now they are. That dry streak I had for a couple months was still really bad, but it's turned around recently and I'm pretty happy with the status of my accounts now, so overall. But I assume for these pulls we're still not going to have any good luck. Shoot for the Sky is interesting. I believe that's my third one. Don't use Slash Val too much nowadays, especially with Rose Val, but it's pretty good for, you know, it's not bad to have multiple copies of Damage Memoria. It's one of the better ones you can get. Alright, and the second ticket pull. Once again, just the Resna Wink. We did get an SSR Memoria, it's not bad. Wasn't amazing either, but, you know, not bad. Maybe this time we'll get a fake out. It's not really looking like it though. Nope, fake out missed, so probably nothing here. Alright, opening with Tao. Love to see it. And yeah, basically nothing. Cool. Well, that's expected. But yeah, I wish I was I wish I could be recording when I get all these good pulls. Like, all these characters just randomly came outside of my videos. Where'd Flock even go? There she is. Very happy about them. The account looks pretty good now. Still missing breakers like at all. No Master Ryza, no Heidi or anything, but very cool. Oh right, I do have Christmas Res on this account. I said I don't have Resons earlier. I didn't pull her, I had to select her, but I do have her. I don't have Bolt Resna still. I guess I should talk very briefly about Roman Tournament. So, because I didn't make a video on it. The reason I didn't make a video on it, there's two reasons. So they dropped Roman Tournament on us randomly. Normally on JP it started after Academy, so they dropped it on us like a month and a half early, right? Very, very early. And the reason for this, the reason why I didn't make a video is because I didn't want to make a video that was just like 20 minutes of me venting about how annoyed I was that they dropped Roman Tournament on us early as a basically cash grab, because they started with the Strike one. On JP we started with Slash and then went to Bolt. They started with Strike. Well, all of the Strike character banners were still up. Like, they started it early to cash in on the Rose banners. That is the reason they did it. You cannot convince me otherwise. And that's why I didn't make a video on it, because I would just rant about that for like 15 minutes because it was very, very annoying to me. But anyways, the other reason is I just don't have the characters to make the proper teams, so I also don't have the motivation to like do a min-max setup. Like, I ended up getting, what did I get? 187 on the last one. I did one try. I literally logged in like yesterday, did a single try, and then called it good because I wasn't going to be able to improve this to 27 million in a single day, especially without Heidi. So but yeah, I recommend watching other content creators for this. when it comes to Roman Tournament, there's not really any such thing as a budget guide, especially for like Strike and Stab. They're some of the harder ones. Like if they started with Slash, you can get through with worse characters. The damage output is much, much lower from the enemies, so you can actually get to the end with a worse team setup. But starting with these ones, like, these fights are brutal, man. They do so much damage. And I just didn't want to rant about how bad and cash grabby it was, which I'm doing right now anyways, but anyways. Yeah, their decisions for global are weird. But, you know, if you have all the meta stuff and did well, then congratulations. If you don't, I hope you got a placement you're happy with. Overall, when it comes to the exchange, everyone's going to be able to buy all of this limited stuff eventually, no matter what your placement is. Just make sure you submit a score every week to get the weekly, and you will stack up these medals over time and it'll be fine. So I wouldn't worry about your placement too much unless you're, you know, unless your account is in a state with memoria and characters where you feel like you can compete for top 100 and you want to. So, but that's pretty hard if you don't spend money. It's just very hard to be competitive without the right stuff. But yeah, that's about it for that. This video has probably gone on way, 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 way too long at this point. But I hope you all enjoy the Academy event, and I hope you don't let Roman Tournament get you too down. It's pretty ignorable in my opinion. If you want, just do one run every week. But Academy is super awesome. Hope you all have a great time. Hope you all get the characters you're aiming for, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a good one. Bye-bye.